One of my roommates in divinity school was born and raised here in New York and graduated from high school. Then he went to the Midwest for college and came back to the East Coast. He was in political science, I was in divinity, but we were roommates. He's a great guy. Really smart, really interesting, really worldly. Wohlforth is his last name. Teaches at Dartmouth now. One day I came home and he said, "Bill, your mother called and left a message, but I don't know what she said." I thought, well, Wohlforth, you're smart enough. What'd she say? Well, I could tell she was being ironic and really sarcastic, so I didn't know what she meant. You see, Bill, Midwesterners are really sarcastic, he said to me. Well, I'm from Chicago. My mother was calling from Chicago. I'd never really had the sense that Midwesterners were sarcastic, but I had it on high authority from someone here in the city that Midwesterners have a gift for sarcasm. Once he told me what my mother said, I knew exactly what she was saying. Of course, it was obvious. So I want to share that gift for sarcasm now, because in this parable, Jesus is being sarcastic. He's using irony. And the whole key to sarcasm, as most of you know, is you're actually saying the opposite of what you're saying, right? The meaning is opposite, but you act like it's this. And it's so obviously not that it flips to the other side. So Jesus tells this parable, and he uses sarcasm to really push his point deeply, deeply in, because he's making an incredibly important point. Have to go back to his time. Have to go back to his time to really excavate the genius of this parable and of this teaching. In Jesus' day, most people woke up and wondered if they would have enough food for that day. Almost everyone was just scraping by. Jesus was a Mediterranean peasant in Palestine, and he knew of the hunger around him. The wealth was concentrated in about 400 people, the royal family at the time, and the rest just worried about getting through the day. Now we have a world where we're living in relative abundance compared to that. It's hard to see through. So Jesus uses sarcasm to drive home the point he's making. He looks and talks about this dishonest steward, right? And he gives sort of a tell. All sarcasm has a tell. Jesus' tell is when the steward says, I'm going to give to them through dishonesty so they may invite me into their homes. See, the point of sanctity in this parable is the home. The home is where he'll be safe. And if he does just enough to build relationships where he may be invited to those homes, he might be able to get through the day when he's thrown out after he gets caught. Home is that place, I've said it before, home is that place where you have access to the food. Home is that place where people know you and invite you in. You don't have to knock. Home is the place where you come in, you go get the food, and it's available to you so you can make it through the day. The only way this dishonest steward had to manage his future was to hope he could be invited into these strangers' homes. Have you ever been invited to a stranger's home? Think about it. It's kind of strange. I mean, real stranger. It's a pretty interesting experience. One time when I was 17, a friend and I rode our bikes from Chicago to New Hampshire. I think we had a map, not sure. We didn't plan ahead. Got out of the car, started riding, and thought, now, what are we going to do? So we went through Detroit, rode right into the city, up over the bridge, down into Windsor, out into the country again. It's about 4 or 5 days into this journey. And it started getting dark. There were no signs for campgrounds, no obvious place to camp. A storm rolled in. It was blowing sideways. We were on a highway. Didn't travel much on highways, but this had to take us on a highway, that little stretch. Started getting dark. Semis whipping right by us. We thought, we'd better get off this road. So we start looking for a place. It's all getting, sort of the dark side of dusk. Nowhere to go. We look up and we see a little farmhouse, a light off the road a while. And so we come up. There's a gravel driveway. We walk our bikes down the driveway. We get to the door, hope there's no vicious dog, and we knock. And you know what we heard? We heard a voice inside. You live in a farmhouse, remote, and you hear a knock on your door at night. What would you say? No, what they said, not even who is this, they said, come in. We're like, whoa, expected to hear a gun, lock and load or something. The dogs start, come in. So we go in, it's like, hey, how you doing? Yeah, come on in, Oh, you're wet. Okay, that's fine. We're on the bikes and we need a place to stay tonight. Oh, come on in, put your bikes in the barn and come on in. So we put our bikes in the barn and we noticed they just killed a calf. They were ready for dinner. So we come in, well, we have fresh calf liver sandwich. Do you want one? Sure, I was starving. Sure. Have a seat. You can take the bed over there. Still feel bad. The daughters had to sleep out on the couch while we got the bed. They just said, come on in. And the first thing afterwards was, are you hungry? Do you want some food? That's how you know you're home. Jesus inherited that wisdom tradition. He illustrated it. He talked about it. He invited people into that reality. And he lived in a world of extreme scarcity, where people genuinely, the broad populace was genuinely hungry. And so Jesus preached and demonstrated abundance in a world that was habituated towards scarcity. He preached abundance in a world that saw that and experienced that scarcity. Now, it's interesting today because we're very abundant relatively. Not everyone has access to that abundance, but much more relative to Jesus' time. And yet we fall into that scarcity. We fall into that habit of scarcity. I do. One time I lived here in 1986, lived up in Chelsea. And if you haven't heard yet, there was a bomb in Chelsea last night. 29 people were injured. They're in our prayers. No one died. Very scary. They found another one. So we were connected to the violence of this world, even though we abhor it. Up in Chelsea 20 years ago, I used to walk out west to come downtown. I don't know why, but I did. It was less people, especially 20 years ago. So I'm walking and I noticed all this trash, boxes. And as I walked by, I could see in the boxes, there was food, actually like grapes and lettuce, and really looked pretty healthy to me. Most of us have food past the sell-by date at home. This was the same thing, but the restaurant had to get rid of it. I thought, wow, the abundance of food on the sidewalk, what a waste. And then I go around the corner and there's a fellow who obviously had no other place to live, who was there for the night. And I said to him, there's a ton of food right back around the corner. And I got the go away look. You know those looks? I get them a lot. Maybe you do too. Don't talk to me, go. And as I looked at him, I saw he had boxes around him. And those boxes were full of that food. I had him in a category that I couldn't see through. And I had a lens of scarcity in front of my eyes that would not allow me to see his momentary abundance. I think a lot of us are like that. And we go to that habit of scarcity. So Jesus' words, they come from 2,000 years. And yet we're still in that habitualized scarcity. We always need more, don't we? we always need more. We're always looking for that lack. So Jesus, in this ironic, sarcastic way today, reminds us and calls us back to reality that our homes are places of sanctity, and that the Jesus way is to create home for everybody. Jesus' invitation to us as disciples is to transform our lives, manage our fears of the other and the scary person, whoever that might be, manage our habit of scarcity that tells us we have to keep everything we have and we need a little more actually. Then I can give a little bit. To manage those habits and to break through together, to work together to break through, to practice true abundance, to practice homemaking. Imagine that the Christian vocation today, as Jesus calls us with the parable, is to make home, to be a homemaker. That's the highest and most exalted work that we could do. Now, in our prayer book, we have a Eucharistic prayer. Today it's B, I think. We use it. The one that's C, if you look at it, I think it's 376, maybe not, in the prayer book. Prayer C in the Eucharistic prayer talks about this planet Earth, our island home. That our work here on planet Earth, the only home we have, is to make sure it's home for everybody. No one is left out. And in this world, with this habit of scarcity, it's so hard. We have to practice that habit and develop that habit of welcoming people home and creating home for everyone to come. And so that's the practice we have here at Trinity, to practice making home. And we've had Doug Meeks here. He's a scholar. He says, it has to look like home to the people who are homeless, not to you. You can't invite them into a home that doesn't feel like home to them. So we have to be in relationship. We have to listen and open our hearts. We can't just push someone in and say, it's good for you, just go do it. So we always have doors that are open, and we have a practice here of radical hospitality. That this is home to everyone. When they knock on the door, come in, come in. What do you need? Come on in. Today is, we call it Celebration Sunday. Sometimes others call it Homecoming Sunday. It's the Sunday each year. We're dominated by the academic calendar. It's the Sunday each year we come back and regather after summer, where a lot of us may be vacationing or resting. And we remind ourselves who we are. So right after this service, we're going to put 25 or 45 tables, I forget what it is, right here, right in Trinity, to invite you into practicing homemaking. Every one of those tables will have ministries displayed to help you practice seeing abundantly when the world wants you to see scarcity, to help you practice welcoming the stranger home. We do that at the Eucharist. We do that in all of our activities, all of our ministry action, so that we can do it in our lives outside. The final exam is when you leave church and carry that habit of abundance, that habit of welcome, that habit of hospitality, wherever you may be. So Jesus calls out to us through this parable, through the sarcasm, through the irony, and invites us to build a world where everyone is safe, everyone has a name, everyone is honored, everyone is full.